we want to talk about apprenticeships. We've talked about it a little bit on the show in the past in a couple different episodes, and really dive into the way we should be thinking about and talking about apprenticeships as a tool of this upward mobility idea we're going for. So maybe to start, Zach, could you just tell us your story briefly? What brings you to this work? Kind of how did you end up being the guy at Apprenticeships for America that's helping folks like us here in Utah make sense of all this?
That's great. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Apprenticeships for America, we are a new organization that really intends to expand apprenticeships on a massive scale in the United States, bringing us from about 680,000 apprentices to 4 million in the next decade. And, the reason I do that is it's a family story. My dad was an apprentice before I was born. So he was in the Steelworkers Union. He worked for our local utility called NIPSCO, where he was a meter technician. And my dad was able to really gain the skills that he needed to succeed and bring us into the middle class. I would say the reason our family was middle class was because dad was in the union and someone trained him how to do this work very well. That opportunity lent itself to a 42-year career where he had a pension, good health care. We didn't have everything we needed, but we had enough. And I had a chance to kind of travel around the country while I was in college. And one of the things that I did was I sold books door to door, and I did that in Appalachia. And I saw the poverty that happens when we don't invest in our people. And I thought to myself that, gosh, this is just so unlike how my family succeeded here in America, and frankly, more families should succeed. So that work has driven a lot of the effort that I did I was the director of a registered apprenticeship and policy at the U.S. Department of Labor through the Obama years. I was not a political appointee; I was a civil servant, and then through Trump one. And during that time, we were able to expand apprenticeships, these earn and learn programs, by about 160%. So I was really excited to work with some of the largest unions, the largest industry associations, the largest companies like Microsoft starting their very first apprenticeship program, and supporting them through that work. And that lent into the time I spent at Urban Institute as an intermediary, helping walk companies through the process, helping them get started with an apprenticeship program, offering them some initial funding to get started. It's a really important aspect of how we really grow apprenticeship in the United States is through this kind of sharing effort that we've started to invest in. And lastly, Nick, I'll just say, my work, and is really driven through anti-poverty effort. It's through my faith in Jesus Christ. I'm a big believer in the Gospel of Matthew 5. That blessed are the meek, and they will inherit the earth. And it is my goal, and it is my faith that we should be helping more young men and women get into really good work with dignity and purpose, and that Jesus calls us to do that. And at least he calls me to do it. And I would be remiss not to say happy International Men's Day to you, as we are today talking on Wednesday.
Well, thank you, Zach. The background is incredibly helpful, both kind of your family experience with you kind of seeing the benefit firsthand of apprenticeships through the work of your father and what that provided for your family. And I personally particularly like the faith component, because I agree, and I feel similarly that my own faith in Jesus Christ and that component as an anchoring part of my life is a huge motivator for what I also hope to do and alleviating poverty and strengthening upward mobility. And I love the dignity component too. And I think that ties in so well with what we're talking about, because in my view, apprenticeships are one of those things that it is so focused on if you will, building up the dignity of the human being who's in the apprenticeship program, because you're essentially saying, we will invest in you with a skill set. We will help you develop mastery over something where you can go out and obviously do it and earn money and provide for yourself, provide for a family. And it's very much an approach of, you are needed in society. There is so much good work to be done, so many wonderful contributions to be made, and we need you. And apprenticeships are a way to help people kind of meet that need. And as you mentioned with International Men's Day, I think also so many of the stories we've heard about the numbers of young men, typically not only young men, but young men who do feel at times kind of disconnected from the economy, from society, from education, from civic institutions, and maybe feel kind of adrift. We've put out some survey data showing that nationally, 36% of American men say that they're struggling to understand their place in their community or in broader society. And we'll have additional data coming out on this topic because it's one that we care about. We want the United States and, of course, Utah to be a place where all people can thrive and live up to their potential. And when we see data that that's not happening for significant subsets of our residents, in this case also referring to men who may struggle, it kind of, to me, it says that, well, we have some work to do. And I want to ask you, from a policy standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, does it feel like we're out of balance in terms of how we invest in pathways after high school? And part of the context for that question is, again, I think there is an attitude out there with many young people. These are anecdotal attitudes, but that they kind of were promised that, well, after you finish high school, you go to college, and if you have to incur student loan debt to do it, you do so. And then, going to college will sort of, quote unquote, guarantee you a great job and a great income, and you'll be fine. And I think for the folks for whom that didn't pan out, they feel sort of frustrated that, well, wait a minute, this is supposed to be my ticket into the middle class. And I, with a huge caveat, this is not to critique or bash on higher ed, because they still play a tremendous role. And we've had economists on the show say, if you look at the data, it's still a tremendous, completing a bachelor's degree can be a tremendous value. But I say this from the standpoint that there are some specific gaps in our post-high school infrastructure where we have a real opportunity to boost the prospects of these folks. So that's why I give all that context to kind of come back to that question that, are we out of balance? When somebody leaves high school and they're looking at different pathways in front of them, obviously college has been held up, and in some respects, understandably so, given the data, as a great path. But that's not necessarily the best path for everyone, and there's a lot of other options out there. So can you talk about that balance question? Just where do you see us as a nation in terms of what we're investing in after high school?
Right. I mean, it gets to how we think about everyone in America. About 30% of everyone in America may complete a bachelor's degree, but that's not everyone. So, yes, we massively underinvest in other methods of being successful in the United States. And, frankly, success in the United States shouldn't feel like the Hunger Games. Everyone should have a chance to succeed and not be working for dwindling resources. So, we've built a system where college is the default, but not the outcome. And 95% of federal aid goes to support college pathways, and apprenticeships receive pennies on the dollar. A balanced system would look like this: multiple pathways, equal trades, equal to jobs where you can earn while you learn, to those that you can sit in the classroom and learn. And I go back to my colleague Richard Reeves, who's the president of the American Institute for Boys and Men, and he wrote a piece that looked at what we invest in higher education to apprenticeships. It's 1,000 to 1, so $27 billion on the side of higher education, and just about 300 million on apprenticeships. And so that's created some inequities. So, the Wall Street Journal earlier this week had a report on the challenges that Ford Motor is having. And Ford's having trouble hiring mechanics at $120,000 a year. That's a good wage, right? But here's the stats that sort of lead us there. It's only 114,000 Americans in their 20s completed vocational programs during the first 10 months of last year, compared to 1.24 million who graduated with 4-year degrees and 405,000 who had advanced degrees. So you're kind of seeing this real weight that's going behind higher education with how we spend as a country, both at the federal and the state level, and how we've divested from the trades over the last 4 decades.
Zach, why the difference is pretty staggering. That there's clearly a weight in favor of kind of this culturally traditional 4-year pathway, which again I've said on previous episodes I benefited from. I went to college, I went to graduate school. It's been a tremendous blessing for my life. But to your point, that's 30. If 30% of Americans are doing that, then there's a huge swath of Americans for whom they need other pathways to be really robust and really effective for them. So given that imbalance, why isn't there more investment? Why doesn't Congress invest more? Why don't states invest more? Maybe even why don't private businesses invest more? Why, do you have any insights into why it's so tilted?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first off, there's a cultural imbalance. You think about you and I here, Nick. Both of us have graduate degrees, but here we are talking about apprenticeships, and you look at every state legislature, our Congress today, most of them have gone through a higher ed program. There's one congressman that I know of out of New Jersey that did a registered apprenticeship program. And guess what he supports? He's done a lot of legislation on registered apprenticeship because he was an electrician. So, we have really gone about this notion that the only way to success is through a higher degree, but there are so many other ways that through apprenticeships that we see that can be a very successful way to getting and staying in the middle class. My old boss is Tom Perez, who's Secretary of Labor. He said it was the ticket to the middle class. And I think he's absolutely right. It's like that golden ticket. But, most of us have spent our careers and our friends and our families, us in the kind of the education elite kind of look down on the trades. Haven't because we didn't come from it. And we're seeing a lot more of that sort of that treatment as a second class system. And ultimately it's going to be to our chagrin, because we're going to leave. Most recent reporting is that we're a million electricians short of what we need to fully energize the country. If we want to be the leader in AI, we're going to have to power the country. I mean, we see all of these tremendous opportunities to be the leader in AI, but guess what we don't have? We don't have the people that are ready to take those jobs that are going to energize these data centers. So it is going to take us to have a big mind shift over the next few years to really think about how we compete on a global level and internationally to really being able to drive our workforce into these jobs that one are available today. We have a lot of jobs that you can earn and learn today, but we also have to convince businesses that have been in the seat of consuming talent, but not in the seat of creating talent. And that's going to be a cultural shift for us.
Thanks for watching that clip of Defending Ideas. For the full conversation, click the link in the description and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your shows.